Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing a comparison between the Losi 8ight RTR over here on the left and the TLR Typhon over here on the right. So these are both four-wheel drive, 1/8 scale electric, what's billed as like entry-level race buggies. So they're both race buggies, but coming at it from a little bit of a different angle. The Losi obviously is made by Losi. The TLR Typhon is made by Arrma, but the Losi is actually the L in TLR. So TLR actually stands for Team Losi Racing. That is the official race brand under the Horizon Hobby umbrella. So they're both made by Horizon Hobby. They both sell for $630 at the time of this video. So the exact same price, exact same type of vehicle, and we're just going to be talking about why you might want to pick up one over the other. So over here on the left, we've got the Losi 8 XE RTR, just came out a couple months ago. It is based off the full-on TLR race kit, so that would be the 8XE 2.0. It is switchable between nitro and electric. This comes as electric, but I bet you if you got the nitro parts, you could convert to a nitro if you wanted to. But it is like the RTR version, so it is down spec from the regular 8XE 2.0. It does have cheaper metals. You know, the shocks are a little bit down spec. Some of the parts are a little bit different, like the battery tray and stuff. It's a little bit narrower, I believe, than the 8XE 2.0. So slightly different, but most of it is pretty much the same race geometry, all that kind of stuff. It still does drive similar to an XE 2.0. Over here on the right, we got the TLR tuned Typhon. So this is from Arrma. It is made by Arrma. It is based off the Typhon, which is their 6S capable 1/8 scale electric basher buggy or race buggy. And what they did was actually take TLR and sprinkle their TLR magic on top of this thing and come up with something that's a little bit better. So it's basically an upgraded TLR Typhon, whereas this is kind of a down spec race buggy off the 8XE 2.0. And so with the TLR tuned Typhon, you get some really nice parts. You got 7775 chassis, 7775 shock tires. You got retuned shocks, which are like TLR tuned. It is 6S capable. It comes in a ready to run or a roller. I do have basically the roller with the ready to run electronics, so it is pretty much the same as the RTR. It's not got quite as nice of a race electronics. It is more of a basher electronics. It does have that 6S as ESC and motor. It is uncensored, a little bit slower servo as well. The radio is the SLT3 radio, is not as good as the Losi, which has full-on censored electronics. So it has a really nice servo, the S665. It's got a 4S capable ESC and 4S motor. It is all censored, and it comes with the higher-end DX3 radio. So electronics on this thing are definitely much more race class. This is still sort of basher class, but we'll talk about where that really makes a difference. So you might ask yourself, which one of these should I get if I want to get into racing? But the first question we're going to answer is, which one of these should you get if you're going to go into bashing? So for me personally, I would definitely go with the TLR tuned Typhon. There's really no downside to getting this over the standard 6S Typhon. It's just got higher quality parts all throughout. It is actually more durable. It has the harder aluminum pieces, the machine pieces. They're all really high grade, so this is much nicer. It does have more race adjustments, which you might not use, you know, if you're doing bashing, but it's always nice to have adjustments. The shocks definitely work a little bit better, and there's really no, I think, downside to getting this. For a basher, this is excellent. It's even better than the standard Typhon, which is a great little buggy. The Losi, I would say, is not quite as good of a basher. It's not really intended to be a basher. You could just kind of rip it up and down your street, you know, build a little backyard track or something like that. But if you want to launch this thing, you know, 20, 30 feet high, do backflips and stuff, this is not really the car. First off, it is not as fast. It is 4S only capable. It's not as durable, I don't think, than the Typhon. The machined aluminum pieces are lower spec. They're, you know, more 60, 61 grade. They're pretty decent overall, but, you know, definitely not the hard anodized stuff that you got over here on the Typhon. So for bashing, I think there's no doubt I would definitely go with the TLR Typhon. When you talk about racing, it is a little bit different. So out of the box, I did take both of these out to my local 1/8 scale outdoor racetrack. I did drive it on the same track, same day. Conditions were slightly different when I ran the Losi. It was dustier, not as good traction. By the time I got to the TLR tuned Typhon, they had already watered it. Definitely traction was up. I was a little more comfortable with the layout and stuff like that. So not a complete apples to apples comparison, but it was the same track, same day with both these buggies on the same batteries. Electronics on this thing are definitely much more race level. I think the smoothness of the motor, the control of the radio, the steer was a lot faster. The sensor system definitely works a lot better. There are a lot more adjustments on this ESC as well. You can just drag rake, turbo, stuff like that. So it is much more race-ish, I guess, from that perspective. The battery tray also accommodates different style batteries, whereas a Typhon is really meant for a 6S or 4S pack. This over here, you can run dual shorties, which allows you to lay them down, you know, sort of in series, really flat on the chassis, get your center of gravity a lot lower. These tires both worked fine. They're a little bit different. You know, the compound on the TLR, actually, I really liked it. Hooked up quite well and maybe due more to, you know, the watering of the track, but they seem to just grip a little bit better in that sort of loose, loamy, you know, very low traction type surface. I think the TLR is designed a little bit more for higher traction surfaces. Definitely the layout of electronics is quite a bit different. This is much more of a forward biased layout. These tires, I think, are for a little bit higher traction surfaces. These tires are still have a little bit of a basher style to them. I think they work really great on, you know, loose, rough surfaces. They're a little bit wider as well, just not too edgy or anything like that. Those hooked up pretty well, but the layout of the buggy is definitely much more traditional. It's got the motor all the way in the back, and it's pretty far back. It's to accommodate the large motor, but even with that, it does have the electronics a little bit further back, whereas you do have more room here to play with on the Losi. You can move the battery all the way up with the 4S pack. You move it all the way in the back. The Arrma is really kind of a little bit more mid to back, you know, of a layout. The TLR Typhon also is quite a bit heavier than the Losi. It weighs, I think, about 200 grams more than the Losi does, even with both 4S packs. I would say that does contribute some to the handling. This feels it does feel heavier for sure, but it also makes it a little bit more stable. I think you do get a little bit better traction overall because it just sort of like sinks into the dirt, kind of lets the tires dig in a little bit better. This is much lighter on its feet. It feels more nimble. But on a lower traction surface, it is edgier, it is harder to drive. You're not going to have quite as much rear bite. Obviously, you can always adjust things with setup and stuff. But this definitely, I think, is designed more for higher traction surfaces. I think most modern 8-scale buggies are designed to be run on, you know, like a watered clay, you know, very compact, very like blown and watered and prepped type surface. Whereas back in the day when the TLR Typhon, which is based off an old Team Durango buggy, you know, tracks were a little bit looser, blown out, rougher, that kind of thing. So the design of this thing still kind of gears more towards that. But I will say that they did do some really nice tuning on this thing. It is easy to drive. I think it's a little bit more newbie friendly as well if you're just getting into racing. I find this a little bit easier to drive than the Losi. The Losi's got a lot more tunability. It does have some edginess to it as well, and it can be a little bit more you know, difficult to drive if you're not used to you know, racing or, you know, cutting these really sharp corners. It is I think a little bit more geared towards the higher level or more advanced driver. The TLR Typhon, I think, is a great beginner one. And so when it comes to racing, you know, which one do I prefer? I would say the Losi for higher traction surfaces, the TLR tuned Typhon for lower traction surfaces. Also, if you're a little bit more beginner, I think the Typhon's easier to drive. The Losi may be geared a little bit more towards intermediate plus type drivers. You can always do setup changes to get, you know, you could definitely like move the battery back towards the rear, get you a little more rear traction, add rear toe. Lots of tunability on this vehicle, but the TLR also has a lot of tunability. So that's one of the cool things about this. I think they did a great job with the TLR tuned Typhon. They made it, although it is a basher, they did sprinkle their TLR magic. There is a lot of tunability. Shocks are, you know, a little bit different. They have bleeder holes. There's no emulsion style shocks or anything like that, but they do seem pretty smooth. I don't know what they did, if they got machine pistons or anything, but these shocks do feel really good. And I think the out of the box setup is pretty good on both. The Losi definitely feels a little softer, a little bit lighter. It's not quite as stiff and as, you know, I guess stout feeling as the TLR. The TLR still feels a bit like a basher, a bit like a sledgehammer that you're smashing around the track, but it is easy to drive. It doesn't do anything too crazy. It doesn't get out of sorts too easily. It doesn't steer quite as sharply. You know, definitely you want to probably play with the suspension setup if you want to steer a little bit more. It tends to understeer a lot more than the Losi. The Losi tends to oversteer a little bit more in my opinion. So yeah, that's pretty much a quick overview of the two buggies. The TLR, I would say for bashing for sure. For racing, if you're doing any mix of bashing and racing, I would go with the TLR. If you're purely doing racing, that is the one where it's a little bit closer. I would say the Losi more for higher traction surfaces, the TLR probably for lower traction surfaces and more of an entry level you know, beginner class or sportsman class or something like that. If you really want to go up to the next level and you know, dial it in more, you probably would want to go with the Losi, get some of the upgrade parts. But then at that point, maybe you want to go with the kit and build your own. But there is probably a little bit higher ceiling, especially in terms of corner speed, in terms of steering and stuff like that, that you would get with the Losi 8 XE RTR. So anyways, quick overview of the two buggies. I thought that might be interesting to you. Those of you who are interested in both these buggies, since they're like the same price, so it is kind of odd for a company to release two different vehicles kind of aimed at the same market at the same price but from a different angle. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe button to look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.